Ah, the humble Firestarter. Decent armor, and with 9 tons remaining. Well, I guess we'll just put in an AC5 and some ammo. Right? Wrong! Oh, I'm sorry for the quirky introduction. So, Ramgar MT sponsored another video, Battletech video guide. One which I'd always meant to do, but just never found the time. And that is one on autocannons. Now, autocannons are bad. They're very bad. So, end of guide, we can all go home, right? Well, actually, I did think to myself, maybe we can learn something from just how bad they are. Autocannons have always been bad in Battletech. Now, they have been fixed in many games by increasing their rate of fire, thus giving them high DPS relative to their weight. But in turn-based, in tabletop, you don't have rate of fire. So, they're bad. Now, we're not talking about ultra autocannons or LBXs. Those are sort of the fix for autocannons. And we'll talk about them later. But I thought, what better skill to have than to identify what is bad in a game? Now, there's a lot of soft stats and situational stuff. You know, positioning, range, stability. There's all kinds of things to think about when you're thinking about the best weapon and the worst weapon. Because naturally, in a game, most people gravitate to wanting the very best gear. But it's also important to identify when gear is bad. And often, you kind of need to test it to truly know whether it's bad or not, or what it's capable of. But there are some techniques for identifying poor gear. And so we are going to go through them today. I've got my my paint here, my infamous paint sheet. I'm going to do some note-taking and some math and so on. But let's just start with this. So, here I have a Firestarter. This is a very standard armor loadout for 9 tons of armament. You can take it to nearly full armor for 8 tons of armament. If you're going to build a Firestarter, you're going to build it either with 9 tons of armament and almost full armor, or you're going to build it with full armor and 8 tons of armament. But I've built it here for 9 tons so we can have an AC5. What does the AC5 bring to the table? Well, it brings 45 damage, 8 heat, and 10 stability damage. And it's got medium... It's a medium range weapon, so its optimal range is around 360 meters and it goes out to 540. I think that is identical to the medium laser, which is the namesake of the medium range bracket. No, actually, it's considerably more. Well, actually, that's a little bit deceptive, because a medium laser will hit with full accuracy out to 270 meters, and the AC5 will hit out to 360, which is a bit further. But then after that, it suffers a penalty to hit of 50%. 50% of the base accuracy of the weapon, to be more precise. Okay. But anyway, we're not going to talk about range. For now, we're just going to assess what is the most... So, what you want to think about is, what is the most important thing about a weapon? It's the amount of damage that it does, right? We are in this business to kill enemies. And we do that by dealing damage to them. So what is most important to us is damage. And we might want to trade a little bit of damage for range or accuracy. Or, well, actually, trading damage for accuracy is math that you can literally do. But you might want to trade it for soft things like range or sustainability, i.e. that it doesn't run out of ammo. there are a couple of things you might want to trade damage for. You don't trade damage for accuracy, because accuracy and damage are intertwined in that, you know, 100 damage with 50% accuracy is effectively 50 damage per turn when you're thinking about it loosely in your head. And so if you then added 25% accuracy to that, you're effectively adding 25 damage per turn. So you're looking at your damage as an output per turn. Then you can do the math between accuracy and damage and work out whether accuracy is worth taking over damage. You know, if you had a weapon that did 100 damage and had 50% accuracy, and then you had the opportunity to bring that accuracy up to 100%, or you could add 50 damage, then you bring the accuracy up to 100%, because then you're doing 100 damage per turn. Whereas, if you added 50 damage, you would potentially be doing 75 damage per turn. So you can do the math on that. But anyway, generally speaking, damage is the most important aspect of a weapon. And here we have 45 damage. We have paid 9 tons for it. And there are no other concerns. So let's write that on our on our paint pad here. So AC setup 1. Oh, can't type today. 45 damage. And what we're going to write here is no concerns. So a concern might be that it will run out of ammo, or that it will overheat the mech, that our build is not stable in some way. But that's fine. So we don't have any concerns here. 15 ammunition is plenty for a match. We always aim. I've always said to aim between 12 and 15 rounds of ammunition, and this is 15, so this is on the high side. And it's not going to overheat the mech. Okay, great. Now, what can we get for 9 tons in, for example, energy? So let's start with 4 medium lasers. We have 30 heat sinking that comes with the mech, leaving 18 outstanding. And then we'll just add 4 heat sinks, or 5 heat sinks in fact, because we have 9 tons to spend. And we're going to spend 9 tons. Okay. So what we have here is we have a mech that is actually basically heat neutral. A delta of 3. So a delta being the difference between how much heat you generate per volley and how much heat you sink. A delta of 3 means it would take... You would have to fire continuously for 3 times 10 turns, actually a little bit more than that, like 30 turns. So that's you know, that's very, very, very well heat sinked out. And you can see here that in this example, where we've not done anything special, 4x medium lasers, we get 100 damage, and we have no concerns. Our delta is 3, which is nothing. This is less concerning than this, which is 15 shots. The 15 shots are going to run out faster than you're going to overheat. So just from this first glance at autocannons, you can see that you can get twice as much firepower, more than twice as much firepower, by running medium lasers without even trying, without even taxing the heat sinks. Now, let's talk about heat sinks. Every mech has got 30 free heat sinking. And effectively, you could think of it like ammunition or money. if your design doesn't spend it, then it's probably a bad design. It's like if you're doing anything and you're given some resources. So you're given, you know, you're going to make a bracelet and you're given gems and gold and silver. And then you finish your bracelet and you don't use the silver or you don't use the gems. Well, you know, chances are it's not going to be as good. This is a very fluffy thing to say here, but it's not going to be good if you leave one of the resources out completely and don't use it for anything. And that's kind of what you're doing with heat. Your heat sinking is very, very valuable. And you're not using it a lot of the time with autocannons. Especially on lighter mechs. So you are effectively not using all the resources that have been given to you. And therefore your design is missing out on something that it could have taken advantage of. Now, this is not even like this. This is too heat efficient. You would be well within your rights to actually take a medium laser out, take a heatsink out here, and put a medium laser in. Oh, the spots are in the torso on this design. For 125 damage and a delta of 18, which is very reasonable. So if we added that, oh, there we go. So here I've made the change to the design. I have removed two heat sinks, one heat sink, and added a medium laser instead. And you can see here that we have a delta of 18. So if we go back to our sheet, okay, 5x medium lasers, 125 damage now, and 18 delta, which is approximately 5 rounds before you need to cool down. And the cooldown would be on a standard biome. The cooldown would be heat sinking 42. So if you took a turn to cool down 18, the 36 and 6. So about 2.25 shots per cooldown regeneration. .25 recycle. Now, you may think to yourself, well, this design here can only fire for 5 rounds before it has to cool down. And you'd think that that would be a problem. But when you look at the damage output, you very quickly realize that in those 5 rounds, we would have done 125 times 5 damage, which is 500 damage. So, I'm going to add that in. This is 500 damage over 5 rounds. Now, this design cannot do... well, it can, but it would take this design to do 500 damage. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 rounds. It would be 460 damage in 10 rounds. It would be 450 damage per 10 rounds, I think. Just checking my math here. Now, in that time, in that five extra rounds, you only need I'd say you only need about 2 or 3 rounds to actually fully reload your energy weapon. So there is no case ever. There is never a case where the autocannon wins. Not over time, not in the short term, never. It is completely outperformed at the basic level by medium lasers. This is the AC5, of course. But let me tell you, the AC5 is actually the most efficient of the autocannons, and it only gets worse from here. Now, here's another thing which is a huge problem with autocannons, and that is upgrades. So looking at these designs, we could have an upgrade, but the only upgrade available to autocannons is plus 10 damage. That's it. That's the only upgrade available. The AC20 specifically can get plus 20 damage. That's the best you can do for damage output, unless you want to add accuracy, but I'm putting accuracy to one side for now because high-end pilots will always land their shots. And you can always use accuracy computers, but that's as true for energy as it is for autocannons, except that autocannons have recoil and other accuracy problems that energy weapons typically don't. But anyway, this is the best you can do for upgrading. So you're going to take this from 45 to 55. Now, interestingly, this upgrade is available for medium lasers as well, but it works on a per weapon basis. So the end result here of upgrading is that you end up with 140 damage, whereas the end result here for the AC5 is that you end up with 55 damage. So energy weapons magnify in damage even more. This design would result in 150 damage, 3 times more than the upgraded AC5 setup, which is just ludicrous. And it's this 3 times more situation that really drives home something. So let's talk about what this 3 times more really means in this from a working out whether something is good or bad perspective. So there's a strategy that you can use for, let me just shrink this, we'll keep this, but I'll shrink it down. You can you can zoom into it, I suppose, if you want to reread it. There is a system of assessing what the best and worst case is for a situation to give you a general idea of whether something is good or not. Now, you're let's say that you're a good player. I'm not going to say that anyone is not a good player. So you're a good player and you have a shot on the side of an enemy mech. So here is your side shot. And we'll look at let's look at the armor of a medium. In fact, we'll stick with lights for now. So the armor here is 40 and 70, so that's 110, and then we have 90 in the arms and 100 in the legs. So we got 90 here. We have 100 here, and in our in our right torso here, we have 110. Okay, let's go back to our sheet so that you guys can see. 110. Okay, so this is our side shot. Now, let's say that this particular mech has all of its weapons located in the torso here, in this side torso. This is why we maneuvered our mech to get this shot, because all of the guy's weapons are here. So that's why we did this. We maneuvered onto the side of this mech because we wanted to disable it as soon as possible. Now, with our upgraded AC5, what is the best situation? What is the best possible outcome that we can have? Well, the best possible outcome that we can have is to put 55 damage in this position here. So let me just increase my text size here. So the best thing that can happen to us is that we put our 55 damage here. Or let's do a log, a damage log. So 55 damage, side torso. Then we would put. Then the next best thing that could happen for us is that we put another 55 damage into the side torso, which gives us 110 damage. Okay, 2 turns, and we've disabled the mech. Couldn't have gone better. It's the power of damage concentration, people would say. But, here's the thing. What's the best case for the energy weapon setup? Well, the best case for the energy weapon setup is that we do 150 damage side torso. So this is the best case for energy. So the best case for energy is better, although albeit less likely, than the best case for the AC5. Now, we could say to ourselves, okay, but the best case for the AC5 is more likely than the best case for energy. So what we'll do is, what if we look at the worst case for energy instead of the best case, and then we go from there. So, what's the worst case for energy? Well, as the arm is completely useless, the worst case is, well, the worst case would probably be 75 damage on the arm, because any further damage would travel through to the side torso, which is what we're trying to disable. So we'll go here, worst case. And the next worst case thing would be another 75 damage on the leg. I put 1 here. Oops. Put 1 here. This is still the first round of shots. Okay. So in this situation, the arm has got 15 health remaining. So arm, 15 health remaining. And the leg has 25 remaining. Now, the second turn, worst case, we deal that 40 damage to the arm and leg, taking those off, and the remaining 110, because it's 150, ends up in the side torso, which kills the mech. So we would have 15 arm, 10 through, 25 leg, 0 through. And then we have 100 side torso plus the 10 through that came from the arm. So, the worst case for energy, the absolute worst possible outcome that you can get from upgraded energy is equal to the best case possible for the AC5. That is how badly they are balanced. That you could look at this using the best case, worst case technique, and without even looking at any, you know, likely case, using a likely case technique, we are just using the best case, worst case technique to literally screen out the extremes of crap and brilliance. This is just a method for very quickly sorting away stuff that is definitely awful and turning our eyes towards stuff that's definitely good, that you can apply to any game. Just like, okay, if I have this weapon, what's the best things that can happen in combat situations and what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst case is a really interesting one to look at in this situation because it shows that given equal accuracy, the worst case for energy is equal to the best case for the AC5. And that's insane. That immediately says to me that that whole category of weapons can just be placed in the bin. And it gets worse for autocannons because it's not just the damage upgrades in the game. There are additional upgrades for energy which there are not for autocannons. And those upgrades are double heat sinks, which obviously benefits energy, because most autocannons do not generate a lot of heat with the exception of the AC20. But that just makes the AC20 even worse than it should be. We have heat exchangers. And we have the pilot skill, Coolant Flush, which benefits energy. Now, it's a very similar story for missile weapons. They are pretty much just as good as energy, or on the same kind of level as energy. I've just used energy here as an example, but you can do this very similar test with missile weapons and get the same result. But just looking at things in the game, or just doing basic number work with the weapons, it reveals how awful they are. Now, obviously the creators of Battletech are not blind, and you know, they came to the realization that autocannons are garbage. And with that realization, they brought into the game, which is now in HBS's Battletech, they brought to the game the Ultra autocannons, some of which are very good. The UAC-2 in particular, fully upgraded, does 35 damage times 2 for 70 total, and it's 5 tons with 1 ton of ammo being plenty, so 6 total. Now you'll note here that this weapon is superior in damage for a huge, you know, vastly less tonnage, 3 tons less, a third less tonnage. There's also the Ultra AC5, which is, again, it's 1 extra ton for 55 times 2 at its highest upgrade. Not necessarily the greatest weapon on earth still, but with double the damage output, this becomes less severely bad. And some of the other softer factors, like the fact that the AC's got better range, so it's a bit more flexible, and it's got some stab damage, which may potentially be useful in certain situations, those things come into play. So it's not as bad. The other weapon in the autocannon set that's actually good is the LBX2, which fully upgraded does 6 times 12, which is 72 damage, and it's also 5 tons with 1 ton of ammo, 6 total. The true benefit of the LBX2 is obviously it's not that it just does slightly more damage. It's that the ammunition drain on it is considerably less. This is only 12.5 rounds per ton. It's 25 shots and it fires to a volley. This is the same 25 rounds, but it only fires 1 shot for whatever reason per volley. So you get 25 rounds per ton, which just makes it a fair bit more efficient. It is possible to, as I said, between 12.5 and 15 rounds is how much ammunition you want to have, and 12.5 is reasonable, but it's just over the line of how much sustain you want to have. Nevertheless, Heavy Metal has added autocannons which are decent. Even you could say good, depends on the mech. One of the great things about these is that they don't generate any heat at all. The Ultra AC2 and the LBX2, I think, generate, if it's not 0 heat, it's like 2 heat, and that's it. Which means that you can spend your heat on other stuff. So if you have a mech design that has room for a good amount of energy weapons, then you can add an Ultra AC2 or an LBX2 and not increase your heat delta, but add a lot of damage. So there's definitely a role for these weapons. But it just goes to show that in order to fix the game, what they essentially had to do was make autocannons twice as good. And then their other soft factors come into play. But basic autocannons are terrible, and this sort of simple thought exercise of best case, worst case really drives home how bad they are. They're very bad. Now, I don't have much more to say. There is always the discussion about headshots with the bigger autocannons. Oh, you know, you can take someone's head off in a single hit. I did a video about that a long time ago about damage concentration and why that's nonsense. Basically, the best weapons for head chopping are actually the Ultra AC2 here with 35 times 2 is one of the best weapons for removing heads, as is the medium laser with plus 10 damage because it does 35 per shot. And do you know what? This is even worse than I thought, because it's actually 175 damage, not 150. I've just realized I've actually made a mistake there. It's 5 medium lasers is 125 damage plus 10 for each laser is 150, or it's 140 for the 4 medium laser version. So it's even worse. It's even with that mistake, it's even worse. That just makes it even worse for ACs. I've made a mistake in favor of ACs here, and it's still bad. But anyway, man, that was this is a well planned video, and that was a silly blunder. But it doesn't matter. This point is driven home anyway. Adding another 25 damage would just make this come about even quicker. So yeah, that's it really. I hope you found this interesting. I hope it gives a glimpse into the techniques that I use to quickly in my mind make assessments of whether something is going to be good or not. So when I immediately plunge into a game, I'm assessing everything. I'm looking at all the weapons and details and stuff, whatever the game may be, and I'm just thinking, oh yeah, if I had that, what's the best case? What's the worst case? How can this unit be beaten? What's it good against? This kind of best case, worst case thing is really a useful mental exercise to do. But anyway, it's a simple video. Don't install autocannons. They're awful. And I hope you guys found this interesting, and I will see you guys next time.